Hello, welcome to Eye on Africa. Thanks for joining us. I'm Rochelle Harrison-Pless. Coming up, tensions soar as Kenya counts down to a presidential vote rerun. Western powers ring the alarm over the country's spiralling political crisis. Togo's opposition won't back down. It's called for a new wave of anti-government demonstrations despite a ban on weekday protests. We have a special report from our correspondent. Plus, he's one of South Africa's most exciting, pioneering musicians, setting dance floors on fire with his Township Tech. We meet rapper, producer and visual artist Spoek Mathambo, who's currently on tour here in France. Good to have you with us. First up, a stark warning as Kenya counts down to a disputed presidential vote rerun. Western powers have voiced alarm over the country's worsening political situation just 3 days before Kenyans head back to the polls. This amid attacks on electoral officials, with some warning the vote cannot be free or fair. Nicolas Germain has the story.
Western envoys from the EU and the US in Kenya are very concerned by the political situation in the country. They regretted opposition leader Raila Odinga's decision not to take part in the repeat election on Thursday, but they also sent out a warning to the incumbent Uhuru Kenyatta.
This election must be held in accord with the Constitution and the laws as interpreted by the courts. Attempts to change the law at the last minute are also not helpful, and we call again on President Kenyatta not to sign the electoral law amendments that are now on his desk.
Raila Odinga has called for mass protests on election day and says the vote will not be fair. Last week, mobs attacked Electoral Commission centres in parts of western Kenya. But the first batch of ballot papers printed by a Dubai firm have started to arrive, and Kenyatta on Monday said the election will take place.
I'm assuring you all that there will be enough security. And those who are planning to disturb or to cause violence or to threaten those who want to cast their votes will see what will happen to them.
The situation remains tense. Last week, one of the electoral body's 7 commissioners fled the country, saying the election could not be credible. The commission's chairman said he could not guarantee a free and fair poll, and its chief executive suddenly went on 3 weeks' leave.
To Nigeria now, where 14 people were killed and 18 others injured after a triple suicide bombing on Sunday evening. 3 female suicide bombers targeted the northeastern city of Maiduguri, the trio detonating their explosives near a camp for displaced people fleeing the Islamist militant group Boko Haram. Now, a show of defiance in Togo, where the opposition is refusing to back down, calling for 3 days of anti-government demonstrations in the capital Lomé, despite the authorities' ban on weekday protests. The most recent rallies erupted in violent clashes, leaving several people dead. Meanwhile, a tense calm hangs over the opposition stronghold of Sokode, as wary residents who last week fled for their lives now begin to trickle back home. This exclusive report from our correspondent Sarah Sacco.
Carrying the few belongings they took when they fled, residents are heading home on foot or by motorcycle. We passed these residents on Sunday morning in the bush, making their way down the dirt tracks that lead to Sokode. The previous night was calm. No shots were fired by soldiers. So after 6 days of living off cassava, this group of women decided to go home.
We're hungry. I'm hungry right now. The police officers beat us. That's why we went into the bush.
We were told they'd left. So that's why we're going home to see if it's true or not.
Violent unrest between soldiers and young protesters erupted on October 16, killing 3 people, 2 of whom were soldiers, lynched by the crowd. The crackdown that followed triggered this massive exodus into the bush. Despite the relative calm, many people still fear for their lives.
When I see a soldier, I'm scared. Those that shoot bullets and all that, I'm scared. You see, my dad went back to Sokode and told me to go back, but I said no. Has it really calmed down? He says it has, but I don't want to go home.
20 kilometers away in Sokode, life is slowly returning to normal. A few stalls are laid out at the market and small shops are open for business. yet signs of the recent violence are clearly visible. Back in the safety of their homes, wounded residents tend to their injuries. This young activist was brought home from the hospital 2 days ago. He claims he was injured by soldiers.
They beat me. I started to run outside. I was running, and when I left, one of them followed me. He shot me twice. But I can go out and protest again. Now we're angry. We have realized the president really doesn't like us.
For the government, there has been no repression. Since the political crisis started on August 19, tension continues to rise in Sokode, Togo's second city, and the stronghold of Tikpi Achadam's Pan-African National Party.
South African politician Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma is in the race for the country's top job. But as campaigning moves into high gear, the ANC presidential hopeful could be up against her first major hurdle. Her name now linked to a sprawling corruption scandal that's rocked South Africa. Our correspondents Caroline Dumais and Stephen Carsten sent us this report.
They are ready for their candidate to take over, and they sing it. These militants want Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma to be the next president. They like her vision of radical economic transformation, and they refuse to believe that the ex-wife of Jacob Zuma has also been corrupted. The British press have revealed alleged business links with the Guptas, an Indian family implicated in financial scandals. But for the Military Veterans Association, this is a plot.
You see that they want to discredit Comrade Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma. We, as the branches of the ANC and all the people of South Africa, must speak against the interference of the foreign intelligence services in our country.
Members of the Youth League present at the rally also reacted with outrage.
Comrade Nkosazana does not own any business. Comrade Nkosazana does not have any scandal. In as much as the imperialist forces are trying so much to make sure that her image is dented, but she has been celebrated internationally.
The former African Union chairperson denied all implications in fraudulent deals. She places herself above suspicion and will let thousands of ANC delegates decide on her integrity.
The branches of the organization look at everyone, and they look at their track record, they look at their integrity, they look at what they think needs to be done in the next 5 years, and then they decide who is the best person to lead the organization for that program based on their track record. We have a document called Through the Eye of the Needle. So people look at you in very fine detail, and then they decide. What could you bring? Why you?
She seldom speaks to the press, but she actively campaigns. If Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma is elected as the head of the ANC, she will be the next South African president.
Staying in South Africa, he's one of the most exciting, pioneering musicians at the forefront of the country's booming dance music scene. Soweto native Spoek Mathambo is a rapper, producer and visual artist whose Township Tech is a futuristic mix of electro, hip-hop and traditional sounds. He came by the studio a little earlier on to tell me what makes the South African dance scene so vibrant and innovative and what binds the country's artists together. Take a listen.
Overall, it's a celebration of freedom. There's, coming from an apartheid era to now, to kind of post-apartheid frustration, there's always this huge release that comes from dance music, and that's what our music expresses. But also the clash of different cultures, rural culture, urban culture, as well as 12 languages, 20 different tribes. Yeah, so it's a mixture of all of that, which creates a real hotbed for music and culture. I mean, it's very natural. I think in the past, most people, had one school of music that they adhered to or that they even liked, and things were a lot more tribal. Whereas right now, due to something like the internet, you can just explore and experiment with so many different worlds at any moment.
Was Spoek Mathambo speaking to me earlier. His latest album, Zanzi Beat Code, is out now, and you can also catch him live on tour across Europe, including several dates here in France. Well, stay with us here on France 24. Lots more news coming up. Don't go away.